So what is the recipe for matching? In a nutshell, for those of you, I'm sure you're already preparing to go on your CaRMS tour. You're going to be assessed on your academic and clinical competence. This is through your letter from your dean. You'll have your electives, whether it's domestic, in-house, or away. You'll have your CV, which entails your research and your productivity. You'll have your personal statement, which is your letter specific to each program. You'll have letters of reference. You'll have your interview, which is extremely important. And everything prior to that will impact whether you receive an interview or not. But also remember that the number of programs you apply to actually has an impact on whether you match or not. Not which program you match to, but whether you match or not. Where the greater the number of programs you apply to, the less likelihood of going unmatched. And this is obviously reflective of how competitive each specialty in each program is. I want to quickly go over some of the fees that apply to everyone, and then some niche fees. So the very first fee, which you should be aware of, is the match participation fee. This is a one-time fixed cost of $291, and it enables you to apply to 4 programs, and just 4 programs. If you recall, applying to university, OUAC, at least back then when I applied, it was the same process. The set fee enables you to apply to, I think it was 3 programs at the time, but in this instance, it's 4. If you want to apply to more programs, which I did, you'll have to pay an additional, $59.50 per program. And I do want to include the caveat here that one program, for example, U of T medicine, family medicine, although you apply to that one program, there are multiple sites, and those multiple sites don't actually increase the cost. Meaning, if I apply to U of T family medicine, I'm going to pay $60, and then I can actually apply to every single program, every single site within this program. So that means I can apply to the Barrie site, I can apply to the Mississauga site and Scarborough site, etc., under the one fee, and that should help you to provide some clarity. Some of the special circumstances include a verification fee, and this is more appropriate to people who did not graduate from a Canadian medical school. And there's also a translation service fee. This pertains to people who are applying to, the French versus the English stream. You have an administrative fee. This is a document kind of transfer fee, which CaRMS, I don't know why they charge you, but they do. It's an electronic processing fee, which they charge. And then you have your ERAS, and this pertains to Americans, people who are applying to ERAS, which is an entirely different system. But these are 4 special circumstances which may not affect you if you are, a CMG applying to Canadian programs. And I think this is the final slide. I'm sorry. So this is the final slide for me, at least for now. And so CASPER is one of the tests which many of you may have taken in order to enter medical school. Surprisingly, CASPER is still necessary for some residency programs, and I was quite shocked as well. Off the top of my head, some of those programs include radiology, some obs-gyn programs, and then I know specifically 2 of the Prairie provinces also require CASPER for all programs. And mind you, once you pay for this cost and you write the CASPER, you can actually use the same CASPER for all of them, so it's a one-time fixed cost. I did not write the CASPER, so I did not apply to those programs. And then you have this test, which is similar to CASPER. It's called FM-Pro-C, Family Medicine Professional Choices. And this is about $60. And this is, once again, a one-time fee where you can apply to every single family medicine program across Canada. It's a situational judgment test, once again, like CASPER, except it's multiple choice. Intangible costs, which you may not consider, are things like, a webcam, lighting, having a backdrop, buying a suit, what have you. These are things that can increase your confidence and has an intangible effect on the impression that you have on your interview. And these are things that we actually don't consider because it's not on paper. And so you may rack up these costs on Amazon or at Best Buy, wherever you buy these things. I don't foresee interviews going to be in person in the near future. I think this is a very good thing from a financial perspective. Obviously, electives where you travel is entirely different, but I certainly don't see interviews going back to in-person. And I think this translates also into admission into medical school. University of Saskatchewan actually did a survey for their class of 2022, and they found that the mean cost for the entire CaRMS process was about $1,500. The mode was under $1,000, and then the range was actually under $1,000 to greater than $2,000, in the ballpark of $2,000. So I'm happy to disclose that for myself personally, I was within the $1,000 to $1,500 range, which is certainly above the mode and close to the mean. And so I think this point here should greatly highlight what you should expect to pay for as you apply to CaRMS, not including the electives that Tim and Adri-Anna will talk more about.
So just a little background for myself. So I'm actually an international medical graduate, and our expenditure is a little different than Canadian medical graduates, even especially with respect to CaRMS. Within the bracket that was presented by Eric with respect to the estimated costs, it's a good ballpark to have in mind. However, again, if you are an IMG who's here, hello, but most likely it's going to be marginally higher, and sometimes even double that median number. So that's a huge stress that comes in, and then how are you financing it? And I guess that's kind of what we do want to help you prepare for, is being able to be aware of what the costs are, so you can plan for that and do your diligence every day within your life to be able to save for it, and also to shelter the debt that you are going to incur, either if you already started it or if it will come in the future within residency. Again, yes, debt is something that is a part of this game because it is a long game in terms of the educational requirement. And those of you who have chosen to go abroad, the expenses are associated with it as well. Even when we touch upon elective experiences, although we are based in Canada and you can do travel electives throughout Canada, those who are IMGs are probably also going to have a lot of international electives under their belt too, particularly within the States as well, to create your full package or full portfolio. Specifically, or the line of credit, as some of you may know, it is a pretty high interest, not as high as necessarily credit card, but pretty high interest bank of funds. And for some of us, that may be the only funding support that we have going into medical school and beyond. So talking from the perspective of an IMG, not uncommon for us not to necessarily match right away. There are a few factors in it. Some of it also depends on the history of your school with respect to Canada, if we're looking at Canada specifically. But again, you're also going to have a lot of expenses afterwards with regards to your applications. The interesting thing, and I will take a brief moment with respect to this, finding ways to fund yourself outside of, well, obviously outside of residency because you're working your way towards matching into residency, but looking for ways to find yourself, it gets really limited within the workforce in terms of what jobs are applicable to your level of training and what you'd like to do, what seems to be relevant with regards to CV development, and also being able to actually earn enough to save enough when it comes down to things like these applications, and also the anticipated costs or hidden costs that are associated with going to residency, which will also be discussed too.
So the next topic Dr. Aloia will talk about is managing your finances during electives. And so part of that we can't avoid is potentially the cost of having to deal with traveling electives. So this year, 2024, is the first year that we've had a return of traveling electives since COVID, essentially. And it's a cost that I personally did not expect to be this high, to be frank, to run into as well. So you can see here that I provided a quick outline of some of the fees. So first off, of course, just like participating in CaRMS, you have the initial upfront fee of even participating in applying for traveling electives, which is that AFMC portal fee you see there. And then of note, there actually is an application fee per elective as you apply to different programs and schools, which is quite notable. So my first tip there is essentially set yourself up for success. This is a mistake that I ran into as well, because I didn't do that first tip you see up there, which is making sure that some schools even have the availability in the first place to accept you as a traveling elective student. Because if you apply to, for example, any school for a program and they reply back to you saying, oh, sorry, there's no availability, you still lost that application fee, unfortunately. It's gone into the void, you've helped fund their program, and you don't get anything out of it. Now, this, however, also is a fee that you might be able to avoid outright. If you don't think you need to do any traveling electives to match some programs that might not be at your home school, then that's fantastic as well. However, inevitably, there will always be some programs, some specialties, which sort of have that unwritten expectation that you do have to perform an elective at that program, at that site, in order for them to even perhaps interview you when you apply for CaRMS. And then, of course, with each elective that you accept that you are successful in applying for, you might have other costs as well, such as Some schools might have you pay out of pocket to sign up for some sort of local insurance, things like that as well. And then once you're actually on the elective, then you consider things like travel, accommodation, food, all of the costs that can match up as well, depending on whether you have to fly there, whether you can even get a local Airbnb that's cheaper, a lot of different factors there as well. So the other tip there is, of course, that just to make sure to check whether your school, your province, or maybe even Canada overall, whether they offer financial aid for these traveling electives. I can say that from being a student in Ontario, there's a program that the government offers that gives you up to $1,500 in reimbursements if you have to travel a certain amount of distance away from your home school to do an elective. I believe it's something around the ballpark of 100 kilometers, something like that. Right, so hopefully that's a good overview of quickly travel electives. I'll pass it back over to Dr. Aloia to talk further about managing your finances during electives.
Thanks, Tim. And I really do love this chart, particularly with the aspect of the question marks on travel accommodation and food. Being able to budget yourself is a very important skill. I know that we're talking about financial literacy and how to be wise with regards to investing your funds, but really at this stage where we're novices within our trade, the element of investing isn't necessarily our main goal at this point in time. A lot of it has to do with figuring out how we utilize money and how we spend it on a day-to-day basis. So budgeting is really important. So with respect to your traveling electives, it's definitely the best way to go about it is to be prepared for it. And so that includes a lot of research on your end beforehand. As Tim mentioned as well, there are some programs that require an elective or some sort of connection prior to actually to be considered for their program. And that may lead into your CaRMS application costs too in negotiating that. But one of the things that I try to do very early on, I recommend to all of my mentees as well, is to really work on what makes you comfortable. And I'm not talking about like luxurious comfortable. I'm talking about what are your needs and what are the things that make you feel fulfilled in a given month. That's how you organize your budget sheet. So things that will affect your traveling electives include the location itself, estimates of per diems, which I definitely recommend everyone to have a look for. Those are just estimate costs of what it would cost you per day to be in this given city. Now, they're not totally accurate, and some of it has to do with your taste as well, but it's a good ballpark. If you find that you do like certain niche things, maybe you want to give yourself a percentage more per day to estimate for. Looking at assessing the cost based on longer stays too. If you're going for a week somewhere versus going for a month somewhere, there may be some room for negotiation as well, and take the opportunity to negotiate too. I find a lot of my peers don't have enough confidence to be able to actually ask questions for support, i.e. discounts, i.e. expectations with respect to things. I'd like to encourage you to be able to do that, especially on a student budget.